So this one is kind of, we're back to the coronavirus, but this one is related to how, so the stimulus checks, so they're being, we talked about this last time, but the stimulus checks are being dispersed from the IRS. And this article out of Accounting Today kind of went through the $1,200 stimulus check for people. If you don't have direct deposit set up through the IRS, or they don't have banking information from you from the last 2 years to make direct deposits, those checks are going to have to be issued via snail mail. And so the Accounting Today article actually walks through the math. So it says that the IRS will send approximately 100 million checks at a rate of 5 million per week, which could take 20 weeks, according to the committee's document. This is from the Means and Way Committee, meaning that the final round of payments may not go out until September. So people expecting, like especially old school people that would get their refunds in checks, or if they owed the IRS and paid with a paper check over the last few years, the stimulus check could take up to, looks like 3-4 months to get to people. And a lot of those people probably are older. My mother, I know, has to make quarterly estimates because she has some real estate activity, and so they wouldn't have her direct deposit information in, and she will get a paper check. And so a lot of these, I think, checks that are going to be delayed until September are probably for a very vulnerable part of our population. And I was just kind of wondering if there was some way to speed it up, or what your guys' thought is on kind of that time frame. And it kind of goes back to another discussion of what we had where, administering payments is the IRS's deal, but now they're kind of operating as a social welfare distributor.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like this is what we had all kind of anticipated when we first started talking about this, about how they had made big claims about how it was going to, and how, in reality, oftentimes with government, those things don't end up happening as quickly as they seem, and just how difficult it is to administer aid that's needed in a really tight timeline, but with, all these drastic changes happening. And so, yeah, I think it sounds terrible, but also exactly like what I would have imagined would happen with trying to implement such a drastic measure, in such a short time frame. What do you think, Ty?
Yeah, I guess it's not, my head's been so into business that these individual checks really hasn't been on my radar. So yeah, I mean, I can imagine people are somewhat disappointed. I mean, I guess the exposure I do have to that is I do have a former client who was, I do have a couple of former clients who were looking at trying to get information on various things to complete tax returns so they can get the stimulus checks. They're really kind of like anxious for that. And so, yeah, this is an interesting point in terms of, well, with all their angst on trying to file a tax return so they can get the stimulus checks, based on what you're saying, they're still not going to get it for several months anyway.
Yeah, I mean, even, in best case scenario, even if they do have your stuff, you may not get it for another month, and it was supposed to cover some kind of stimulus to cover lost wages and lost time and effort spent for people that are out of work and maybe having to make payments. And so, yeah, I mean, even the quickest way they can get them to us is delayed, just because of the timing of this, where the IRS is releasing refunds on top of stimulus checks. I just can't imagine being an IRS worker right now. They're probably, and I know there was a hiring freeze for a long time at the IRS. So I imagine they're probably overworked and probably unsung in this whole thing.
I agree completely. Yeah, it sounds like not fun for anybody involved. But yeah, hopefully they're able to get their ducks in a row and get the checks out. Do you guys have any other ideas on how maybe the government could have ran this in a more streamlined way, or maybe there's a better approach to these type of entitlements to get that money out to people?
I did actually. That the sporting events, when they have those T-shirt cannons, I thought they could just load it up with cash and kind of drive around to everybody's house and shoot it at them.
That's certainly more fun, but they did ban the sporting events, so what can we do?
Sports anthem kind of blaring out of loudspeakers and just a rain of cash on my front lawn. That would be fun.
I'll take it.